Hello and welcome back everyone, and in this tutorial is going to be about the push and pull objects system. So at the end of the tutorial you're going to be able to identify a cube, and when you overlap the box collision you're going to press F, and then you're going to have this animation here of the character pushing or pulling an object. As soon as you press the W key to move forward, you're going to be able to move and also move your object as well. So when you press backwards, you're going to be able to move your cube, and you can also jump on it. And the good thing about this is that you can move to the left, the right, forward, backwards, and it can also detect the environment, so it doesn't pass through the other objects in the world. So that's going to be it. And now let's go for the tutorial. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a blueprint class. We're going to choose an actor because it's going to be, of course, the pushable cube. So I'm going to name this to be BP cube, or yeah, just BP cube. Hit enter and double click on that. So here we have it. So we're going to use this cube here for us to be pushing. So I'm going to click here on the static mesh. I'm going to browse to the asset, and I'm going to drag and drop that to the BP cube here and drag it to the default scene root. Let's make the cube the new root. I'll save, and let's drag and drop that BP cube to the world so you can have an idea of the scale. So let's suppose this is a level design and you have to, maybe the character cannot like jump right into here. So let's suppose the character cannot jump into here, so he has to drag this cube to there, so he can finally jump above it on the top and then finally jump on here. So I want to add a box collision into my BP cube, so I'm going to add box collision. So I want to only be able to push or pull this object when I'm near it. So I'm going to put it like this, and I'm going to go to the details panel and search for hidden in game. So I'm going to take this option off so we can see it in the world. So as you can see, it's right here. I'm going to rotate this cube so it's going to face my forward direction here. I think that's okay, just a little bit more out. Yeah, I think that's okay. So the next thing I want to do, if you want to do, is to choose the line thickness. I'm going to choose to be 2, and the color as well, we can choose that. I'm going to put mine as orange, doesn't matter. Just want to see it better in the world, as you can see there. So the next thing I want to do here is go to the box collision. I'm going to name this to be forward, and going down here on the onComponent begin overlap, that's the event that gets triggered when the character overlaps the box collision here. So I'm going to add, and here's the event that is executed. So out of this bin here, I want to print a string, and let's say the text color is going to be orange, and the key is going to be a random number. It could be like that. And here on the in string, I'm going to type is overlapping, or you can say like is the character can pull or push that block. So can interact. Character can interact, and I can choose a text color to be green, for example. And I want to add a new onComponent and overlap event. I'm going to copy and paste the same print string here, and I'm going to choose the text color to be red, and I'm going to choose the key, a random key number, And yeah, that's it. So when I go play here, there's overlap with the box collision. As you can see, the string is printed. So when I end the overlap, when I step out of it, I get the message saying that I ended the overlap. Character cannot interact. So this is going to be very useful, but firstly, we're going to create a variable inside our third-person character saying is interacting, question mark, is interacting box. And the other one called can interact box. So I'm going to drag them. So the first one here can interact box. I'm going to drag off this and get a branch. So we're going to identify and check if our character can interact with the box. So if the character is near the box, he can interact. So as soon as we press F, this is going to go also to a branch and can interact if it's true. If you are near the box, then we can go to the next branch. And this next branch is just basically going to check if the player is already interacting with the box collision. So if it's not, then we want to interact now because it's the first time that we are interacting. And if it's not, I want to disable it. So I'm going to set the max walk speed. Walk speed to a custom number for example 60, and then I want to reset that value later as soon as we end the overlap event. We want to set the max walk speed to 230. That's my default max walk speed, but for you it might be different, so you can change that based on what you have in your project. So the next thing I want to do is just to get the reference of the PP cube. So I'm going to drag off this. You can drag off the begin play on your code here. And after this code, I want to get actor of class. And I want to get the same name that I have wrote on my blueprint here. It's called BP underline cube. And I want to type BP cube like so. And I want to promote the return value to a variable and call this BP cube like so. Now I want to drag off this BP cube. And remember the mesh, it's called SM cube. So I'm going to type the same name. So we're going to get the SM cube mesh. And here you have the reference of the mesh. So you can drag off this and set simulate physics to be turned off. Now I'm going to paste that in there, duplicate it, and I want to simulate physics. As soon as the character starts interacting with the box. So it's going to turn this variable to true. It's going to set the max walk speed to 60, which is going to make our character to move slower. And it's also going to simulate the physics of the cube, which is going to allow us to have more physics options. A little bit of more realism and smoothness when we're moving our cube. So the next thing here I want to do on the viewport on the BP cube, I want to add a physics constraint. And this is going to allow us to modify the physics with behavior. And here you can basically choose which part. We can basically limit the amount of angles that the cube can move. So you're going to see that through the tutorial. So here I'm going to add a new component name, and this is going to be the name of our mesh. So in my case, it's SM cube. So you can basically type that. So here on the linear limits, I'm going to free the X, Y, and Z motion. So now we're going to create a function or a code, use some calculations to calculate and make the cube to move using the event tick. So I'm going to drag off the event tick here and get a branch. And I'm going to firstly cast. I'm going to get the actor of a class. I'm going to get a reference of the character. So I'm going to type my character name here. In my case is third-person character player. I'm going to promote that to a variable and say character reference. I think I have a character reference here. So I'm going to type to name this should be character reference. Now I'm going to get the character reference, and get is interacting with the box. I'm going to check that. Now we're going to check if the character is in front of the box. I'm going to get can interact with the box. I'm going to get another branch. And here on the begin overlap, I'm going to drag the character reference. Out of this, I'm going to set can interact. Should be true. And here I'm going to do the opposite. So out of true, I'm going to get a sequence. And before we proceed, let's go back to our third-person character. And here on the movement input, you probably don't have promoted this to a variable. So you can do it now. So to promote it to a variable is very simple. You can just right click on it, on the axis value here. Make sure you're on the movement input of the keyboard, because there's also a gamepad section there. So you gotta make sure the movement input is on your, it makes part of the keyboard inputs, and you're going to promote this axis value to a variable. So that's going to save this axis value, and we're going to be able to use it on our cube blueprint. The reason why we do that is because we want to get the inputs of the player, and depending on the inputs of the player, we're going to be able to move the cube with the respective direction. So here, you're going to promote it to a variable. Don't worry about the block inputs here. This is just from another project, but you can follow just by promoting this to a variable. And you're going to also promote the move right left to a variable, and this is going to be named as right left axis. So by doing that, you can just compile, save, and get these variables there. So I'm going to drag and drop our character reference here. Get out of the character reference, we're going to get move forward, get forward, backwards axis. That's the name I have named there. And after that, I'm going to get right left axis. And as soon as the character presses the W to move forward, then the axis value here changes. And it changes between, I think, -1 to +1, depending if the character moves forward or backwards. So if the character moves forward, then it's +1. And if it's backwards, it's the opposite, it's -1. So what I want to do, I want to check if the player is pressing any keys here. So out of this, I'm going to get a branch, and after then 0, I'm going to connect that to there. And if it's true, then the player is not moving any key to move forward or backwards. And out of true, I'm going to print a string saying, I don't know, player, or maybe player is not moving forward or backwards. I'm going to choose a color to be green. Actually, I'm going to choose red because it represents more if the player is not moving forward or backwards. So here I'm going to choose a random key number here, so it doesn't overlap with the other print strings that I have there. I'm going to duplicate this, and from false, I'm going to plug that to the print string. And here I'm going to actually check from false. I'm going to check again if the player is moving forward. So I'm going to get an operator, and an operator that is going to check if it's greater or equal. So if this value is greater or equal than 0.1, then I'm going to get a branch. Actually, I have it here, so I'm going to get a branch. And if this value is greater than 1, then I'm moving forward. Then I'm going to connect that to the print string, and I'm going to type is moving forward. So that's when we know if the character is moving forward. I'm going to choose the text color and also the key. I'm going to collapse this. I'm going to get another node. And in case this is not true, then the character is moving backwards. So from false here, I'm going to connect that to the print string and say is moving backwards. Okay. That's it. Let's test it out to see if it's working. So as you can see on the top left corner, character can interact. So as soon as I step out, it says character cannot interact. So as soon as the character can interact, I press F. And as soon as I press F, it says is not moving forward or backwards. Now, when I press W, then it says is moving forward. And now it turns back to is not moving forward or backwards. Now, when I press S to move backwards, and it says is moving backwards and character cannot interact. So that's the base code that we have right now. We also want to do to the left and right sides later. So I'm going to just put this below here. So I'm going to create a macro, and this macro is going to be named move and also direction. So we're going to be able to control which direction the character is going to move, if it's the left or right, forward or backwards. We're also going to be able to control the speed, so it's going to be speed and direction. Let's first start by getting the cube, and out of this I want to get forward vector and get the right vector. Now I'm going to, out of the return value, I'm going to select vector, and I'm going to let the inputs take that. And the return value, I'm going to place that on B. And with that, we're going to be able to choose which direction we want to choose. So depending on the direction, I'm going to multiply it. So that's going to be the speed. And I'm going to convert this to a float. And this is also going to be customizable. So I'm going to put that to there, and I'm going to name this to be, this boolean to be move forward backwards. So depending on this boolean here, we're going to be able to move forward, backwards, or left or right. Yeah, you're going to be able to understand this later. And here on the B, I'm going to type just direction and speed. Let me see. Yeah. Here you also choose which direction, but it's like a different way. You have the option to choose to go forward and backwards, and you also have the option to go left and right. And here you also have the option to go left and right. Yeah, that's kind of confusing, but you're going to be able to understand it later. I hope so. And out of the cube, we're going to get relative location. And we're going to add this out of here. And we're going to get the interpolation node, which is going to smooth out the transition of the cube, of the location. Going to get relative. Actually, I can just drag that to there. There we go. Now here in the delta time, I'm going to get world delta seconds. And the interpolation speed is going to be 4. Now we're going to finally set the relative location of the cube. So I'm going to copy this, set relative location, finally. So now going back to our event graph, drag and drop our speed direction macro, and you're going to put that to is moving forward, for example. And if the character is moving forward, then I'm going to take this on. And the direction speed is going to be 34. I'm going to copy and paste this. This option here is going to remain true, but the direction speed we're going to choose -34 because we're moving backwards. So let's test this out. Let's press play. And as soon as we overlap the box collision, press F. And we entered the push and pull state. So when I press S, yeah, the character is moving, not the character, the box is moving to the left. Let's do, I think, yeah, right vector. Maybe this one is right here, and this one is right here. Let's test it out again. So as soon as you overlap the box collision, press F, and you move forward. There we go. Backwards also works. And when you press F again, you can move freely again. So you can move forward, you can move backwards, but you can move left or right. And how we can fix that? As we have the macro, it's going to be pretty easy. It's going to be very, very easy. So the first thing we're going to do here, we're going to get out of the sequence. It's used for executing multiple codes, and it's pretty useful in our case. So we're going to do practically the same thing as we did now, but for moving left and right. So I'm going to organize this a little bit there. And we're going to do the same thing. I think we can basically copy everything if it's not a problem. So we're going to that one here. So now we're going to basically drag off these values there. Here on the values, it's very important for you to take this option off because we're not going to move forward or backwards. We're going to move left and right. And I also want to change is moving forward to moving right. And the one below is going to be left, is moving left. And I also want to change the key. So all you gotta do is just take this option off here. So when you press play again, so when you press forward, left, forward, backwards, it works. So now let's try left and right sides. We have to change this value here. So the direction speed is going to be negative. And this is going to be positive. Now let's try it out. Move forward, move backwards. Now move left. There we go. Move right. So here on the angular limits, I'm going to lock everything. So as you can see, the cube is moving faster than the character speed. We can choose a value, a custom value inside our event graph of our cube blueprint. And if the cube is moving faster than the character speed, we can try a value, I think 31 maybe. Yeah, I think 31 is good. So you're going to adjust it depending on what value you need. So now let's set up our animation blueprint. So let's go to our event graph. You don't need to worry about anything here. So let's drag off the character reference and get can interact or get is interacting box. This one is the best one. So inside our default locomotion, we can go from idle to push. We're going to set up our animation blueprint. I'm going to right click and add a new state. And this is going to be push pull objects. So I'm going to make a transition. So I'm going to allow my character to go from the idle state to push and pull objects. And here on this transition rule, I'm going to drag and drop our interacting box and can enter transition. Yes. So if our character is interacting with the box, then we can enter the transition of push and pull objects. So now let's enter this animation pose here. And I'm going to use our UE4 strafe active walk, not this one, but this blank space here. And this is just an animation of the character to be, it's like a blank space for the character to be able to punch. It's like a pose for punching. And I'm going to use this plus the ground speed of the character. So I'm going to use this blend space and also other animations on the top. So firstly, I'm going to drag and drop the ground speed here. And for the direction, I'm going to get it. So if you don't have the direction code, I can show you what it looks like here on the event graph. If you don't have the calculate direction code, here you go. So going back to push and pull objects, I'm going to apply an additive. And I'm going to use the lean, ELS lean. And I'm going to plug that to the additive. And here, if you double click on that, you can see that the character moves backwards, the lean to the left and right. And here we have some values, minimal axis value, -1, +1, for all the directions. So what we can do to fill out these variables here that we need is just by, if you remember that we promoted this to a variable, then you can get all this forward, backwards axis inside our animation blueprint. So to do that, it's very easy. You can just get from the character reference here, and we can get the right, left axis and forward, backwards axis to be filled there. So going back there, I'm going to get our forward, backwards axis. So this goes to FB, and left, right, this goes to here. Now I'm going to get the pull animation. My pull animation is this one right here. And this pose is going to be applied on the top of other animations. And I'm going to drag that to the animation graph. And out of this, I'm going to blend poses by bool. And I'm going to drag and drop our forward, backwards axis. And I want to say that if our character is moving backwards, so that means that if it is equal to -1, then it's going to go to the active value. And we want to blend the pose. We're going to choose the false blend time and true blend time. Now I have another animation here. It's called push poses. And if you double click on that, as you can see, I have a lot of different poses of push and pull. Actually, I have only push. But what I want to do here at the frame of 0.3, which is this part right here. So I want to use this pose for pushing the object. And how I can do that. So let's go inside our animation graph, and I'm going to drag off that. I'm going to drag this push and poses through here. And here on the sequence player, if you right click on it, and you can convert to a single frame animation. So you can convert a sequence player to a sequence evaluator. So you can place which frame of the animation you want to choose and use. So here on the explicit time, I'm going to choose .3. Compile, save. And here it's going to go to the false pose. Now finally, we're going to blend them all together. So I'm going to get this layer blend per bone. This goes here. This is going to be the base pose. And here on the layer blend per bone, I'm going to add a new branch filter, new index, and choose spine underline 0.1. And the blend depth is going to be 3. And the mesh space rotation blend. So I'm going to compile, save, and I think that should work. So I'm going to press on play here. So as soon as I press F, then the character is going to go to this state. I move forward, backwards, left, right. Everything works. And you can also allow the character to go from push pull objects to idle again by just grabbing the interaction, is interacting box. If it's not equal, not Boolean. So if the character is not interacting with the box anymore, then we can go back to idle. So of course you can smooth out the transitions here. I can choose like the duration time to be .6, for example. So you can have a smooth blending between these states. Don't forget to check out my Patreon page as I post all the systems, all the project files from old to new tutorials in there. So that's going to be it. Hope you enjoyed, and I see you in the next one. Bye bye.